in this video, we're gonna learn how to synchronize animations between peers. So I have a 3D asset made by Kevin Iglesias about soldier animation. So Kevin Iglesias have given a permission for us to use his asset for this course. So big thanks for the Kevin, and please check out Kevin works because his animation is really good for prototyping and simple games. I really appreciate it to Kevin, and if you guys also please check out Kevin Iglesias assets, I will put the link on the description. So let's import the Kevin Iglesias animation to the third-party folder. So we have granted the assault rifle animations and soldiers. So let's go to our player, prefabs, go to gameplay, player, and here's our player. So let's replace the 3D model from the third party here. We have models, soldier dummy here, but we don't want to use that. We want to use prefab instead. And then we're gonna add it here. Here's our player. And in here, we also have a gun already, so you guys can use it later on. And then we're gonna delete the visual and the cube. We don't need them anymore. So the gun is not originally tied to the player prefab, but I just added it, so we do not need to configure so much. Okay, we're gonna go back to the play here, and let's try to play. Run server, we have our player. Now we just need to add animation to the player. So let's go ahead, go to our prefabs, our player. We're gonna add a new script here. So we're gonna add a new script. We're gonna call it player character animator. So open that up. So I'm gonna change the namespace here, gameplay dot player dot animation dot character dot animation. So add a serialized field of, so we're gonna use the Unity default animation, which is the animator, or we can say mechanism. And then because animation is only visual stuff, it will not affect the simulation at all. We can use another behavior alternative to network behavior, which is the netstick behavior. It's the same with the network behavior. However, we're not allowed to have a network property on the netstick behavior. So we're gonna use the callback of network render here. Now, yeah, as I said, network render should only used for visual stuff. And another thing, we're gonna create a field to get the player character movement. So we're gonna call it movement. And now let's set up our animation on here. So we're gonna set up the animation here. Go to the player prefab as a animator. But I do not want the animator over here because we already have a animator on this one. So we just need to create a new animation controller here. So let's create a animation, and then I'm gonna add another folder here, call it soldier, and let's create our animator. So we can do that by using, go here, go to window, animation, animator. I'm gonna move it here, and also we need another one, which is the animation. All right, now we just need to create here. We can use this button, create, and we are on the correct path. So we're just gonna move and just gonna rename it to soldier, and click save. And we have the first animation. We're gonna replace this animation because we do not want to use them. We're going to use a blend trees. Blend trees allows us to have a smooth transition between different axes. I'm just gonna show you because this is gonna be a little bit confusing if we don't show the visual stuff. So here we're gonna create state from new blend tree, and then we're gonna call it walk or walk. And then in the blend tree, we're gonna double click on it, and in here we can set what axis will affect the blend tree. So from top-down games, we have several axes such as here. So we're going to have a front axis here. We're gonna have this axis, and this one. So that means we will have two axes, which is this one and then this one. So let's try let's try to create our first parameter here. I'm gonna rename blend to horizontal, and the next one will be the vertical, like this. So, and then we're gonna change the blend type from 1D to 2D simple directional. Change the parameters to horizontal and vertical, and then we're gonna add the clips here. We're going to have 4 clips here. First clip that we're going to use is which is the walk or run. Let me see what I'm gonna use. Run clip. We have backward. We're gonna look on here, backward, forward here. So we're gonna get for forward, and then we're gonna run for backward. So I'm gonna populate this stuff. It doesn't matter for the other for now. And then we're going to use left, and then lastly should be right. This one. We don't want to use the RM. Alright, now we just need to adjust the position X and the position Y. So for forward, it will have a position Y of 1. So how does we determine this? So each of motion have a position of the player axis. So this one is right. Right should be over here. This one is left. This one is right. And we just need the backward. I don't know which backward. But it's a little bit faster just to do it from the here. So it's gonna set 1 minus 1 and 1. Alright, that should do, because left is only here, right over here, backward over here, and forward over here. So let's try to play the animation here, and what we can do is play this red dot here. So if you go to here, move the red dot to close to the left, it will change the lag to this position. So we're just gonna test it out here. It's gonna go backward and forward. Right. So now we just need to control this animator using the scripts, using C# script. So let's go back to our Visual Studio. So what we're gonna do is get the player animation. So what we're gonna do is get the player velocity. Now to get the player velocity, there are a lot of ways that we can fetch. The first one is using the player input or this velocity. So let's create a simple field. I'm going to call it a last velocity. And this velocity, I'm going to make it a private. And then this last velocity will equal to velocity. Now this last velocity is not networked, which means other players won't know the real value. So to network this kind of stuff, we can use a attribute of networked. Okay, the network attribute should be a using network. Then you're gonna add a networked, like this. However, I'm gonna refactor this a little bit. I don't want to be like this. However, I want to be last velocity using as setter. Right. There we go. Now this won't work because we need to use the get sets. So if you're confused about network properties, just make sure that you can refer to the NetSec documentation. And then we're gonna go back to the topic here. Now fetch input is only getting called for the server and for the client that owns this object. So other clients will know that this will happen. So they will not know the last velocity value. So that's why we need to make it networked. Now, because we have a public getter in here, we can use here in movement, we can set the animator dot set float of horizontal, and then we need the value here. So I'm going to make a vector 3 velocity equal to movement dot last velocity, and it should be velocity dot x, and this one should be dot z with a parameter name of vertical. So I'm gonna click save, go back ahead to Unity, and we're just gonna add the component here, play character animator, and drag the animator from the soldier assault rifle and just gonna drag the player character movement. Oh, I see that there's a typo over here. Player character here, movement. A little bit typo. Just gonna save. And let's check that in again. So let's go back to Unity. I'm gonna run server. Okay, we have not adjusted the player Y offset here. We need to adjust the offsets. This one to be Y. This. Alright. Let's try to run server. And there we go. Now, however, there's a little bit issue currently. Let me check what was the issue. If I'm gonna check the animator, what's going on? Oh, we forgot to connect this. So set as default layer state. Now we can see our player moving. Now there's also a little bit issue here, which is the horizontal and vertical number is very low. So we're gonna fix that. So let's try to multiply the value of velocity, let's say 1,000 or 100. Save, go back to Unity, play again, run server, and we have our animation working. Now the animation is currently kind of off. We're going to fix that later on. So what we need to focus right now is also create a idle animation. So we'll change this to idle. So we have combat idle, and a lot of stuff. So let's take a look which animation that we're going to use. So what we are going to use is the combat idle here. So we're going to have a little transition here. So we're going to make a transition. And then this should be the default value because it's idle. And then we're going to make a float. Let's call it speed. So if the speed is very low, that means that this guy is idle. So now let's adjust the settings. For now, we do not want has any exit time. We just want to have transition duration. Now let's do speed. So if the speed is very low, which is let's say less than 0.1, it will go to idle. And vice versa for this one, greater than 0.1. And then we just need to set the parameter of speed. So let's go back ahead to Visual Studio and call animator.setFloat, call it speed. Now the value, we can use velocity here, velocity.magnitude. So let's go back ahead to Unity. So I'm gonna play, run server, and our player's idle gonna walk, and it's having a animation. So all works really good. However, we still have an issue that our player character rotation is very abnormal, that it is not relative to the camera. So we're going to fix that soon, because the purpose on this episode that we are learning how to updating visuals from the network property. Before we end these episodes, we're gonna clean up a little bit as usual. So let's move this script, player character animator, to our player character over here. All right, now we have made our animation works. Now we just need to test it on the client side. Now let's try to build the game and we'll see the results. So we have a client window here. Let's try to host the game, run server, and run client from here. And we walk. Everything works perfectly. All right. So there's one issue that we need to fix, that the player is floating. Yeah, we don't want to set the position because Kevin luckily has made the pivot to be on the foot. Let's try to rebuild the game because the shadow here is very off. So let's try to build again. So I'm gonna play, run server, run client over here, and I'm gonna try to walk. Everything looks good. All right. So we can push each other, and that works too. All right. So let's recap what we have done in this episode. In this episode, we have learned how to update visuals and what callbacks that we're going to use. And also we have learned how to use network property. All right, see you guys next episode.